Hi everybody. I want to conclude this series on abuse, at least for the time being, by addressing an aspect that deserves more attention than it gets. When we hear the term domestic abuse, we naturally think of men's violence towards women. But women abusing men is not as uncommon as we might think. While 1 in 4 women will experience domestic abuse at some time in their life, the estimated figure for men is around 1 in 6. The men's charity Mankind, which assists male victims of abuse, actually claims that for every 3 victims of abuse, 1 is male. Another surprising statistic comes out of the UK government crime survey for 2017. That found that of the 1.2 million reports of domestic violence, over half were by men. Now, to bring it even closer to home, the most extensive research ever done among Adventist congregations in the States found that men in the church were twice as likely to be victims of abuse from their wives than men in the general population. So this is no minor issue. Now, the general dynamics of the cycle of abuse is very similar between the genders. But when it comes to domestic violence specifically, where we see the greatest differences is that women attack less frequently, they cause less severe injuries, sexual violence is very rare, and women commit less murders. Now, women's violence towards men tends to be more emotionally reactive rather than forward planned. But we are seeing a disturbing increase in what psychologists call intimate terrorism, which is a much more calculated, intentional form of abuse. Women tend to be more adept at emotional abuse, which can pave the way for physical assault, especially with men who believe that using force against a woman is wrong under any circumstances. The more violent female abusers will often use weapons to make up for the difference in physical strength, or they will wait for opportune times when the victim is off guard, like when they're sleeping. Now, while shame plays a significant role in the reluctance to report for both genders, that shame is compounded in the case of men because of society's perception of masculinity. Men who are abused by women are often seen as weak or emasculated. If we hear of a woman being abused, the reaction is often sympathy for the woman and anger for the man. But when it's the other way around, the reaction is often amusement or ridicule. And that's an attitude we need to change. In one program I was conducting on abuse awareness, one guy said, any man that gets abused by his wife deserves it. Now, while reports of domestic violence by men has doubled since 2012 in this country, it is still estimated that only 10% of men will report abuse. And part of that reluctance, in addition to the stigma, is the lack of practical support, the fear of reprisals from the abuser, the fear of being accused. It is not uncommon for female victims of abuse, or rather female perpetrators of abuse, to claim to be the victim. And where there are children involved, there is the fear of losing custody or losing access to their children. Now, if you are a male victim of abuse, you need to reach out. Break through the stigma. Speak to somebody that you trust. Contact one of the specialist organizations like Mankind, Men's Advice Helpline, or the other organizations listed at the end of this video. Be aware that you might need to put physical distance between yourself and the abuser, especially if there are children present. Remember that allowing children to witness abuse is a form of child abuse. Now, while at times it might be necessary for you to use physical force to defend yourself, never retaliate. Again, it is not unusual for abusive women to provoke retaliation so that they can claim to be the victim, get you arrested, thrown out the house. Never retaliate. Keep a record of all incidences of abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, physical abuse. Keep photographic records in case things go down the legal route. What can we do as a community of faith? As usual, shine the light on abuse. As men, we need to overcome the kind of toxic view of masculinity that keeps men suffering in silence. Remember that our model for manhood is Jesus himself. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane was prepared to ask for the spiritual and emotional support that he needed. So use Jesus as our model for manhood. Let's create an environment in which we can support one another. Research shows that one of the most powerful things that we can do for those who are suffering from abuse is to ask, how you doing? No, really, how you doing? So let's be there. Let's commit to one another. Let's create environments where iron can sharpen iron. Let's create environments where we can bear one another's burden. And most of all, let's learn to lean on the one who has promised to stick closer than a brother and who will be with us through thick and thin. Thank you for watching this video. Please feel free to share it. Check out the others on my timeline. Check out my YouTube video that's been set up to address issues of emotional and relational health. And let's work together to create safe environments. Let's work together to combat abuse in all its forms, in our homes, in our churches, and in our communities. God bless you.